Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Area Control Bros, where we talk about area control games. Mostly.
Yep. Hello, welcome.
Welcome. Mostly is right. So
Mostly.
far, exclusively, but eventually, mostly.
Yeah, eventually we'll have to branch out into wild accusations about what an area control game is. Like Blake was talking to me earlier about trying to convince me that Sheriff of Nottingham is a area control game.
Yeah, you're trying to occupy the opponent's mind.
Yeah. I think we can figure out a way to make any game an area control game,
Yeah,
you know.
I've heard Monopoly
ridiculous
described as an
statement.
area control game, and I just reject that.
I
That
think
is
we
pretty
could be.
ridiculous.
I think
I do it for the memes.
I think an area control game, maybe I'm putting in my own selfish egotistical desires in here, but I think an area control game must come with some modicum of control for the
Mm,
player. Like,
Hmm.
it's not just the dudes are on a map, it's like you get to choose where those dudes on a map are going, right? Monopoly, you're
right.
just rolling a die. You're like you're just on the theme park ride.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
therefore
I
it
mean,
cannot be area control, even though
your
technically you're
current
buying places.
definition still does not rule out crokinole, which I've long tried to convince you is an area control game. So you'll have to think on that one.
That's a conversation
it's
for another time.
it's a
Anyway,
Yeah.
dexterity area control. Yeah.
this is a very special episode, the third episode, in which we talk about two games that are very near and dear to us. They're both out of print. They're both FFG, back when FFG still made board games. And both of them are hidden information area control games. The first is Forbidden Stars. The second is Battle for Rokugan. And I think we'll go in that order. So just a
Yeah.
quick introduction for Forbidden Stars. Interestingly, despite having been out of print for I think it was out of print like a year after it came out. So I want to say it's been out of print for 8 years now. But it's an 8.0 on BGG, and honestly, the most surprising thing about this game is it's actually sitting at 100 out of 100 on strategy, and it's 138 overall ranked on BGG. So I think the fact that a game was basically out of print immediately after being released, because FFG lost the 40k license soon after from Games Workshop, the fact that it's been out of print for that long and was only in print for that period of time, and yet still is that high on BGG, says something. And the thing it says is that the people who like it a lot, and the people who have played it have generally rated it highly, because there's no new influx of people that are playing Forbidden Stars. It's hard to get a copy. You have to pick it up find a used copy on Facebook Marketplace, on eBay. Maybe
Yeah.
your aunt's neighbor's son has a copy in the attic.
Or be the board game leech like I am, and leech off of Will's copy of Forbidden Stars. I think Blake also snagged himself a copy as well.
It's right.
Yeah.
It's right there. I see it.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yep. This is an unplayed copy though. Like I bought it as a new copy from a small game store. I believe it's called Grumpy Bob's Emporium that sells all sorts of knickknacks, and they just happen to
Ah.
have like a copy on their back shelf, and I got it shipped from Kansas. Unwrapped it and have not played my copy. But
Yeah, that's where you
Well,
have to find it, is some random guy in Kansas or wherever, dark section of the country or world it might be residing. Yeah.
Blake's investing. That copy of Forbidden Stars is going to go up more than the S&P 500 over the next 10 or 20 years.
we can only hope. We can only hope that there's more and more demand for this game. That
But anyway,
people want it.
also interestingly, it's an 8.0 on BGG, which is again extremely high, especially considering how heavy and opaque this game is.
Yes.
The fact this game is rated this highly also means I think people that actually take the time to learn the game like it a lot. That being said, I think we should just dive right in and talk about Forbidden Stars. Does anybody want to go first? I don't want to always go first.
Yeah. Unless you're trying to jump in, Ben, I'll.
No, you go ahead. Yeah.
I think might be important to start by talking a little bit about Forbidden Stars because this is a game that maybe people haven't played. As well mentioned, a hidden order area control game, and yeah, kind of two main phases that play out, which is placing your orders and then revealing them. And it can be very fun because you almost always have some sort of misplay or minor misplay or major misplay that happens during that placement phase, because there's so many mind games with this of like you have all these different sectors and you see a guy place a hidden order in a sector next to you and you're like, well, I don't know what the heck that could be. Are they moving in? Are they gonna double advance and try to take their objective in my system? Do I need to prevent something? But you just have no idea. They could be doing anything, right? And to me that phase is so much fun. And then you get to the next phase and it's like, okay, now we get to flip everything. And so it's kind of interesting, that resolution phase where you're flipping everything can be actually pretty snappy and quick, other than the battles, which will put things on pause and you get to have this really really cool battle. Um, but yeah, I feel like both phases have a lot to offer there. You have a control over which how would I say that, what order you reveal your orders in the second phase, so there is some room to
as long as they're
still make
uncovered.
decisions as long as they're uncovered. Yeah. uh,
Yeah,
you
the
cover
stack
people's
manipulation.
orders.
Yeah,
Yes, which also leads to a lot of fun decision making. Um,
yeah.
I
Tons of
wasn't
With
gonna
mind games in this one.
I
with the
wasn't gonna
hidden
interrupt you,
orders,
Blake,
yeah,
but I think we should
yeah.
just really quickly rewind to before this part of the game even begins. We have to talk about the map generation.
Oh, right. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Sorry, Ben, I interrupted you. Were you
No.
gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like there is a like another layer on of strategy with just like when you like putting an order over another person's order as well. Um, yeah, I lost
Yeah.
most of the rest of the point, but
No, but
that
that
was
that's
that was the
important though,
gist of
right?
it.
Because
Yeah,
It is. It is.
if you're scared of someone's order, you can just slap an order over it. They can't resolve their order until your order is resolved. And then
yeah,
maybe you have another order somewhere else and they go, "Well, I want to be able to resolve my order that's underneath your order. So I'm going to put an order on top of your other order so that you're forced to resolve that order that's on top of my order that I need to resolve." You can really really
yeah.
get down the rabbit hole. Um,
Interestingly, most games have an issue, even chess, with the first player bias, where if you're the
mm,
first person to go, you usually have an advantage. And like, I think that Forbidden Stars is probably the opposite, where it's like if you're placing last in a round, you have the advantage because you get to put something over everybody else's that they can't like put something over on you,
yes.
which is something that's unique to the whole hidden order kind of gameplay.
It's worth
Yeah,
mentioning
definitely.
before we go back to map generation, that the first player also has kind of an advantage, which is to say, if they put a tile on the bottom of a stack, that can be an advantage if they know that that is the tile that will be revealed and resolved after everything else that happens. So if there's a sector where tons of shit is going to
Yeah,
happen, having it advanced at the very bottom after everything else happens, and nobody can do anything about it except for that one Eldar event thing that they can do, is huge actually, and on some terms that matters even more than going last. But I'd say in general going last is great because you get to see where people are going, where they're diverting their forces and resources, and where they might be moving. And so I think there are advantages to pretty much wherever you are in the turn order for that particular round. And it may not be exactly the advantage that you want for the round, but there is some
yeah,
advantage to everywhere.
Right. It really changes your decision making, what position you're in, without a doubt. But I think Will's exactly right though about we really should start with the map generation because unlike a lot of games, the map generation in this is really exciting and it's sort of this
Yeah,
fun community event
it
where it's
is.
like, what the heck are
yeah,
we gonna do here? And yeah, I
There
think
are
we all love the map generation.
absolutely, and just a brief aside, Forbidden Stars in a lot of ways is a game that could not exist in 2024. There's just like zero chance of this game being developed like today because it has so many mechanics and like weird things to it that kind of wouldn't be done in today's game design because people would be afraid of it being like too obtuse for the normal person to like understand in the rule book. And even for us, it took a long time to learn how to play properly. And
Yeah.
I think the map design is part of that. I think a lot of the time in games now, you're more likely in this kind of game to be building the map like while you play, like maybe like in dwellings, for instance, like as you explore, you're putting down a tile as like an action you can perform mid game,
Right.
and then the initial map is smaller, but it's been randomly generated. And Twilight Imperium is an obvious comparison to this, where some people do play Twilight Imperium without a randomly generated map or a curated map, and they go with creating the map like at the beginning of the play session. And we don't do that because it takes too long to do that and also play the real game of Twilight
Right.
Imperium. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
takes
You
too
could
damn
shave
long.
off some time from TI on the day of, then you do it,
Yeah, and also I will say that even when I do that with Twilight Imperium, it's simply not as much fun or interesting as it is in Forbidden Stars, because this part of Forbidden Stars probably takes around 20 minutes, I would say. Does that sound about
Can
right,
do.
guys?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Between like
think
10
it
and
could be
20.
even less, but like, yeah, around that time, yeah.
Probably 20. This game is actually has almost no setup, which is interesting for the genre. So like you basically just take your faction, and you put out put out some little minis of the cities and the factories and everything on the table so people can reach for them, and then that's it. That's your setup. Like
Yeah.
that's all you need to do, because you're going to do the map setup collectively, and
Yeah.
that's really cool. That
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
beginning.
I mean, some say that games of Forbidden Stars have been won during the map generation.
Some
Mm.
I think
Some do say.
all of us have said that.
And that could be scary to hear for some people. So we'll
That's
have
another
to talk
thing.
about the warp storms at some point here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is another thing where I think if this game were made today, they wouldn't want to have the map generation stage of the game be so important that it could decide a game.
Yeah.
And I think the more you understand this game, the more important it is. You realize how important it is to be tailoring the map to benefit your faction that you've chosen, because the factions are super asymmetrical in this game. And the Tau, for instance, I guess I'm already talking about Galaxy in Flames. I guess I'll good to go back to the base game. The orcs, for instance, want to have a very easy time getting around by land, preferably. Which is to say, in Forbidden Stars, if two planets are adjacent to one another, you can travel across them thematically with short range ships, like without having to go through the warp or whatever. Um, and so you don't need to build a space fleet, which the orcs, they don't really want to be doing that. And so the orcs are going to want to be building this map where everything's connected by land, essentially. But if you're the Eldar, you're in the opposite position, where you have a bunch of ships, and your ships are great. They're some of the best ships in the game, just the tier one ships. And so you want to create a map that's extremely difficult to traverse for anybody but you, and a map that you can defend and take advantage of your sort of aerial superiority. And so these sorts of things are coming into play instantly in map generation. You're thinking like, oh god, he's got a land bridge there. I gotta have to block this off, or else he's gonna have a way to get to his objective. And so, and not only is it interesting just in a general sense, but also how it's interesting differs depending on the faction you've chosen, because you're thinking about how you think about it depends on who you're playing as.
Yeah, I should
Yeah.
mention you are putting down like that's another thing. It's like you're putting down the objectives
Yeah, that too.
that other people are going for. Like they need three of the four that are in the pool, and you're putting down like two of them. In the case of like a 3-player game, so you're like already having to think about like, am I going to just like consolidate some of my forces at my like home system and make sure that that's defensible, because like obviously I want that to be defensible, or am I going to like spare a couple of the guys that I start with that might end up in the middle of nowhere because it's like the first tile that I'm playing. They could just end up like on the other side of the galaxy. Do I want them to at least like offer some kind of token defense, of some of these like objectives that might just be kind of gimmies? And I feel like that's another interesting part, is like you do kind of have to throw out some planets that are just like, yeah, the Will's just gonna get this one. Like At some point, like, this planet's crap. I can't defend it. I need to put down some of my objectives. Like, just have it. I tend, when I play, to err on the side of I only want to have one of these other guys' objectives in my home system. So I tend to put out more objectives on some of these potentially empty planets rather than in my home system. Because I'd rather just have to deal with, like, oh, Blake might want to come for me later, rather than like both of them have a reason to come to like my house and disrupt things, you know?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I just want to add on that. Well, no, I guess we'll talk about the warp storms in a minute. Should we talk about warp storms
Yeah,
with
we
all
could talk
We
this?
about
should
warp
talk about
storms.
warp
We
I
should talk
mean,
about
storms.
warp
it's
storms. Yeah,
relevant. It's relevant.
it's
Let's
And
talk
relevant, and
about
you're
warp
right.
storms. I'm dying to
Yeah,
talk about warp
yeah,
storms.
let's talk
he's
about it.
dying to. The warp storms are so important with the setup phase because it can sound a little scary of like I'm setting out, a third or maybe in a four-player game, a fourth of what, this person needs to win the game, this one objective in just basically empty, indefensible space. And, I don't want everybody to be mad at me. I'm like giving away points. Well, they have the warp storms in this game, which is such a cool mechanic. Basically, the way they work is it's like a dividing line between tiles that have been placed down that can't be crossed other than with a few exceptions, such as like the chaos dominate power can send someone over a warp storm, and I believe they have a few other options with chaos. And then I think Eldar might have a few ways to teleport
Yeah,
across the
Eldar
map
can
as
kind of
well.
Eldar can teleport to some limited extent, but it's not like it's usually not going to be useful with a warp storm because your
Yeah.
ability to teleport is contingent on where you already are,
hmm
and like you can't like do a surprise attack across a warp storm with anybody but
I
chaos,
I was
basically.
thinking of their they have a strategy card that lets them move to an unoccupied planet, or is it the ship to an unoccupied void? Don't remember.
That they can, yeah, it's I forget the exact name of the event card. I feel like I should know it because I play Eldar so much. I think I want to say it's like it's something fleet, but anyway, they get to place a one of their basic ships in any empty void or a void that
Ah,
they control, I think.
so not
And so
relevant for this part
it
because it
doesn't
won't get you an objective.
it doesn't technically go like past a warp storm, but like if there were an empty space on one side and then there's a warp storm dividing where your stuff is, like you could technically put a ship there, but it's not really doing that much for you because like you can't use it to traverse the warp storm. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, you could put it there, but
And you need like ground units in order to capture the objective. So having a ship on the other side is
yeah.
going to help you.
I just want to briefly emphasize this might be the only game that I've ever played where the players choose the victory condition for the other players.
Yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
that
that's a
crazy
good
if you
point.
think about it? It's there are a lot of things in this game that have like never been done since or before that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm sure in some board game it's been the case, but it's the only game I could think of where like I'm choosing what you have to do to win.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know?
which is very cool. Like you're going to have to come to my home system eventually, type of thing, or what have
Yeah, like
you.
yeah, it's pretty funny.
I also like how obvious it is on the board, like when someone is going for an objective or not. I think that's really important, given that it's a hidden objective game or hidden order game rather. Um, because if you have a hidden order game and then you have like no idea what the hell anybody's going for, especially in something as weighty as this, I don't know. It's murky enough as it is. I like the idea that I can see, oh well, Ben's placed down an order into this sector where he doesn't already have any guys. It's probably a move order, and oh look, his objective's in there. It's got to be
Hmm.
that he's trying to get in. You know, I think
Yeah.
that can be good. Despite having a hidden order system, give you enough information to work on that you can sort of deduce what people are doing. Um,
Yeah, this is probably the best hidden order system ever, because there's a line, there's sort of a tightrope, I guess I should say, where like with hidden orders, you want there to be more than zero information available to the other players when they make their decisions about their orders, but you don't want there to be so much information that they have perfect information, or else what's even the point? Uh, Clockwork Wars, you have zero information. And Diplomacy, one of the original Hidden Order games, is you're just writing down your orders on a little notepad, and then we resolve
hmm.
them all simultaneously. And so the only way you have it, any way to gauge what's going to happen beforehand in Diplomacy or Clockwork Wars is really to ask people. Be like, hey Ben, are you gonna like send your dudes over there? And you could be like, oh, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't have any like real indication whether or not you're going to do it. Whereas due to in the order placement phase in Forbidden Stars, they literally place an order in there, and you don't know what it is, but you can sort of deduce from the context what it
Yeah,
might be.
yeah, because you're like there, you have to have dudes where you're gonna strategize, which is how you like get like upgrade your deck and upgrade your ability to wage war. So like unless you're Eldar, which has the exception to that, like it's you don't want to like usually like bluff a strategize. You don't want to be like I'm going to put this here and make them think that I'm moving in here. It's like he's probably going to put that somewhere where he has dudes, but then again, there's still some nuance there because sometimes it's like, well, I have dudes here, but like maybe I'm moving to that planet that has one of your objectives to get there and defend it before you get there. But actually it's just a strategize. And I've fallen victim to this trap
Mm.
before, which is I was like, I'm so sure Blake is moving in to defend that objective. I can't move in there this turn. I can't handle him. And then it's just like, oh, it's just a strategize. I could have moved in. I could have gotten that objective. I'm a complete dunce. I can't believe I've done this.
But that's what I mean, though. It's like
Yeah.
it's knowing that something is happening there, but not knowing exactly what it is what makes this game so magical. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
it's like you
So
just
so much room for the mind games, which I love. I love that about this. I love that in any game, but
yeah.
meaningful mind games, let's go.
And it's so perfect for I'm not a 40k expert actually. Ben is our 40k expert, but just
Yeah.
from
Yes.
what what little I know about 40k, this game feels like such a perfect thematic fit because it's utter chaos. Like the like everyone's got imperfect information. There's like warp storms raging all around everything, and like some maybe half of your scouts come back and they're like, we don't know what the orcs are doing next door, but they're doing something, and then you have to do something about it, and it's like, but you don't know what they're up to, and so like
Yeah.
I just create this whole like narrative in my mind just kind of without even trying. It just kind of happens when we play this game of like there's the poor space marine fleet which is just trying to defend like the center of the map or something, and they're getting all these reports of like people coming in, and they're like, well, do we bunker up, do we leave, we don't even know if they're actually just coming through, if they're going to stay. Anyway, it all kind of fits thematically as well, which
I
is
would
cool.
agree, yeah. What
Yeah. I
do you
love
think
the
on that,
theme of
Ben,
this
in
game.
terms of 40k stuff?
Yeah, I mean, like they play how you'd expect, like some of the factions with the lore, and like I think I mean, I love the orcs. They're the like best 40k faction, and like all of the objectives do have some
Guaranteed
flavor.
comments below. Controversial statement.
I they have my favorite objective, which is all the objectives have some flavor to them attached that you don't like have to like that isn't like that important. It's an objective at the end of the day, but it's like one of the orc objectives is fuels for the trucks so that we can get the trucks to get more fuel for the trucks. It's something like that.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
chaos
the
faction's like
orcs are
looking
so
for some
goofy.
like epic like sword, like some evil claymore that they need that's gonna just let some guy be like reach godlike proportions. The
Yep,
orcs are
yep.
there like looking for red paint or like fuel,
Yeah.
which is gonna be like there's less fuel on the objective than what they spent to like get to the objective of fuel, and it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
just
And the cards tell us a story there too. The
yeah.
cards are great in this too, right? Like the actual combat system is card and dice base, which um in a way that I don't think I've seen really repeated elsewhere. That very interesting how that all comes together.
No, this combat system is completely unique as far as I know. I don't know if any, and this comes back around to what I was talking about, where this game would not be made in 2024 because the combat system is just too in depth. This is a combat system that's like almost on the level of like like a dueling game or like a
Hmm.
like BattleCon or something or what have you. And in 2024, I think quick resolution is what people want for combat. You look at like more modern games, like Dead Reckoning, for instance, just toss the cubes in, and that's
Right.
fine for like the end game Dead Reckoning is. And I think that if there's one issue with this game that's going to prevent it from being a 10 when I score it later, it's that the combat system is kind of like one of the highlights of the game, but it's also something that can drag the game because
Mm.
even though the combat is like probably either best in class or competitive or best in class in an area control game, some of my favorite combat period, um, it when you're not in the combat, it takes a while,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
so
that's a fair point.
and so when if you guys are doing a combat, I'm just going to go to the bathroom. I'm just going to head out for a bit, it's important for me to see what cards you guys have upgraded because when you strategize in this game and you upgrade your deck and your access to like what's basically a stronger fighting ability, you don't need to reveal what you've upgraded. That information will only be revealed if a card is played in combat, and that's open information. And so, like, if Blake strategizes, I don't know what he upgraded, but if I see him fighting Ben and he plays the card that he upgraded to, now I know that. And so now it's like, now I know, now it might be like, oh crap, he took such and such card. I need to think about how I'm going to counter that. And so that aspect of combat is interesting, but I think it's like once you've absorbed that information, the rest of like the combat isn't necessarily important to like the person who's not participating.
Mm.
And so I can
Yeah.
see there being valid criticism of this game on the grounds that the combat is too long.
Yeah.
Um, Not every combat. Sometimes combats are over like right in the first rounds.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
definitely.
it does have like a cap. Like as long
It's
as
three
people don't
rounds.
have too. Yeah, it's 3 rounds. So as long as like you're playing with people who don't have like too bad of AP, which this game gets me in APs sometimes too.
Hmm.
Um, like it's gonna have an end. Like there are some. Like TI can have this issue where it's like you have just a boatload of ships on both sides, and then it's like nobody's willing to retreat, and you're rolling dice for like 5 minutes,
Oh yeah, I mean the
and it's
combat
like,
system in this
you
game is
know,
better than TI by far. It's not
yeah,
even close because even like the difference is like in a small battle of TI, like it's just down to the dice, right? Like it's like a cruiser v cruiser. It's totally random. Like you might have like a card or something that helps you out a little bit, but ultimately, in the day, there's so few hit points that like it's just total luck. In small
yeah,
engagements of Forbidden Stars, it's tense because the whole battle can be decided by like card play, basically,
Mm. Yeah.
yeah,
and that kind of thing is like it's like the fractal combat done right. Although this predates fractal, where like the cards you choose, you absolutely want to think about what card you're playing, what
yeah,
cards they have and can play, what units you have in the combat in order to like activate any special abilities and stuff. And I think what's great about this combat system is that any combat from like early game, mid game, late game, 1v1 troops, ship battles, big conflicts, all of them, your input is tremendous. Like the cards you choose when you choose to play them and your unit selection beforehand is all very impactful. And
yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
you know,
And I will also say, worry not if you love being screwed by the randomness of dice, which I am in that camp. I do love me some Ameritrash. I love me throwing some dice. I love just like it's out of my hands at this point. Like I don't have to think. It's like let's see what happens. I love that part of board gaming. It's Forbidden Stars is like a smorgasbord. It's got that too. You've got some dice. You can get screwed by rolling just a bunch of morale when you need
Yes.
literally anything else. Or it could be really great if you're like chaos and you need morale dice. But or you could get screwed the other way and not roll any morale.
Mm.
every faction has ways to fix the dice, though. The dice are
Yeah.
there to make things a little more interesting, but they're not actually a huge component of whether a battle is won or lost because there's no like miss. I guess is the important thing.
Yeah.
Even hitting morale, like you said, it can be really good actually for some factions or from some for some situations, and every faction has ways of converting that morale to a different face of the die, or like the orcs can make everybody reroll dice, including morale
Yeah.
Right.
dice.
To
And so
Ben's point, though, it's certainly possible, especially when maybe you're only rolling 2 die instead of like in a later game battle where you
that's
get to
true.
roll
That
all
is true.
8.
Yeah.
Like you might not want to play your card that converts dice first. Maybe you upgraded one other card, and if you had just rolled 2 guns and you could play your strong card, you would win the battle right there. But instead, you got to worry about
That's true.
converting.
With
So
with,
it's
with
true they
an
have
early
some
game,
mitigation,
yeah,
but I think in the early game it can actually screw you. Um,
Yeah, it can
yeah,
also
you're right.
you can end up in a situation where it's like, oh, like I should win this combat, but you just turn it into like nobody wins. You know, like if you roll all guns, it might just be like, well, everybody's gonna die. Like I don't have any defense dice, so we're like
Ripper
yeah.
like
swords.
I can't win this fight, but you're not winning either. So
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the deck building because I think it's so fascinating, and I wish there were more systems that use something similar. Um, Basically, you start out with 10 cards, relatively low power level compared to the upgraded versions of these cards. Maybe I shouldn't say upgraded versions because they'll do very different things
Yeah, they're
depending on
just
the upgrade. But
entirely different cards
yeah,
that you
like
put in
there's
your
some
deck.
that feel similar, like in Chaos, for example. A lot of the level
That's true. Yeah,
one
chaos is
upgrade
a little different.
cards feel like kind of an improvement on the base cards, but doing very similar things. But for the most part, you're getting different effects. So you have this 10 card deck, and you're going to draw 5 cards, right? Well, when you upgrade your cards, you get 2 copies of a new card, and I guess in your base deck of 10 cards, you have 2 copies of 5 different cards. And when you upgrade, you remove one card type, 2 copies of one card from your base deck and replace it with a stronger copy. So your deck never goes above 10 cards, and you're always drawing 5 for your battle. So you're very, very likely to see this card that you've just upgraded and bought into. It certainly happens where you might not see a copy of it, or maybe you see both copies and have a particularly strong combat. But to me, that's so fascinating. Like your deck is never changing. You've got 2 copies of every card in a 10 card deck. Normally with these deck building games, if you have 10 cards to start with, you're going to have 7 copies of some basic card and then 3 copies of another or something like that, a
Mhm.
la Dune Imperium, where you maybe have one special card like the ring in that game, the signet ring,
Yeah.
but then a bunch of basic cards. All your cards are doing very different things, but some of the RNG of the draw is mitigated by just having those 2 copies of each. um, I think it's really, really cool, and I think it works really, really well.
This is the system that I'm the most surprised hasn't been replicated. Because
Yeah,
like there are a lot of things in Forbidden Stars which I think are harder to implement well into a game as smartly as it is here. But like, why isn't this caught on? This is like such a good like deck building system.
yeah, it feels right, and it allows for enough like randomization between battles just with drawing a different hand. Like you can really get boned on the draw, but more often than not, you're like, okay, well, I got one copy of my new card that I upgraded into for this combat. Like that's probably enough. I think it works really well.
yeah,
Also worth mentioning that the more you upgrade your deck, it becomes even less and less likely that you don't draw your good stuff, right? Eventually, your deck is
Yeah,
nothing but good stuff if you're strategizing once per turn, even. And at that point, your complaints change from well, I can't believe I didn't draw like an upgrade card to like man, I can't believe I didn't draw 2 copies of the thing I want, or
right.
you
Yeah,
know yeah, like
yeah,
it's your deck you feel your deck getting better very tangibly because of the way the system works. Like when you strategize, you feel that you strategize, that you definitely have a better deck. If somebody else has strategized more than you, you're afraid to fight them, and you should
yeah,
be.
yeah,
yeah, definitely. With the
yeah.
combat, you also I tend to feel like I have a pretty good estimation of whether I'll win or not going into a combat, which to me is a pretty good thing. But there's combats where you might even think that you're going to lose, but you have that little sliver of hope and you need to go for it. And I think that's so cool in this game too of like I've got to get in there. I've got to roll the dice. I've got to draw my good cards. I've got to make this happen. if not now, then when? We didn't mention with the warp storms after the initial placement in the setup phase. There's a part of every turn where the warp storms get moved around and continue to block up the map, and so it's always possible that you're planning for your next turn, and oh well, someone could get their strategized card could end up allowing them to move the warp storm in your way, and so you might just have to make the play now with maybe an insufficient army. Um, but there's enough in there to give you hope in those battles. I don't think any of them are like completely predetermined unless you're talking like, yeah, this will guy comes in with you know 3 high tier units and he's strategized a million times, and I've got one guy sitting on a 3 resource planet since the beginning of the game that hasn't been bothered. He's probably you're gonna kick me off of there pretty handily. But I
Yeah.
like that aspect of it, of feeling inclined to take battles that maybe you won't win.
Yeah, I think that's another interesting part of it too, is like you want the objectives because that's how you win the game. But also like, as you're going on, people are like creating cities because you need cities in order to be able to upgrade into the higher tier of units and the higher tier of cards. And those can become targets as well, even if they're like on a system that doesn't necessarily have like an objective. Like sometimes it's like I like this is on my path to the objective, so I'm going to go and take this city because I want to like I need 2 cities to upgrade into my like better cards. And like that's like you're also creating like more objectives, like side objectives as the game goes on.
Yeah, yeah, and kind of on that same note, there's a lot of times, and I think you've mentioned this already, Ben, with a few of your examples, but there's plenty of times where you feel inclined, you feel like you need to go and almost attack someone else's objective just so that you can defend it later. That's not an uncommon occurrence with us, where it's like, Will, you're sitting on Ben's objective with one guy. Are you going to reinforce it? And Will's like, well, you've got 2 points out of 3 and I've only got 1. Why don't you deal with it? It's like, okay, well, I have to go attack Will's guy so that I can defend against Ben's guys next turn, type of thing. And
The
so there's
table
all
talk for
sorts
this
of
game is
scenarios. Yeah.
the table talk for this game is so funny because it's
Oh, it's
like
the best.
it's just it's not like some games where like it's like 50% gaslighting, 50% pleading. In this game, it's like 100% gaslighting.
but at the same
It's
time,
just
right, like you kind of need to convince others to help you in some way, shape, or form. But
well, but a
again,
lot of
there's
the
so
time
much
it's sort of like,
transparency
hey man,
around the points, that
yeah.
you can make pretty convincing arguments around it, I think.
Or even like it's almost like a game of chicken sometimes. It's like, hey, are you going to reinforce there? It's like, man, I haven't put an objective there yet. Are you going to do it? I'm not going to do it. And yeah,
One of us
I'm
has
not.
got to stop him.
One of
Yeah.
us has got to do it. Like if the other person's going last, you can put them in a position where like they have to do something about it.
Yeah.
Although we've discovered, I think the game that Ben took with Tao on that land bridge, it was like a speed run game of Forbidden Stars, was the result of me leaving something for Blake to do, and then
Yes.
Blake like messed up the order in
Yeah.
like the
I
stack,
think I'm more guilty than any of us of
and like I was next
letting the
door was
car hit me during the game of chicken.
yeah, and I yeah. The car kind of hit both of us because like Ben just like won for free basically. I was like next door with some big group of people. I like easily could have come over, but I was like, oh, Blake can take care of this.
He's right there in the road. He's got to do something.
Yeah, that just
uh,
comes to mind as like a situation where like it was like gaslighting gone wrong.
Yeah.
The consequences.
yeah.
But should we talk about the factions a little bit, maybe? Just because, and maybe
Sure.
a little bit, maybe just I guess a quick note. We do have Galaxy in Flames, which is a fan expansion made by the game. Since it's out of print, and there's an enthusiastic following for this game, there's an excellent fan expansion called Galaxy in Flames. The base game has Space Marines, Chaos, uh, Eldar, and Orcs. And Galaxy in Flames adds the factions Tau, uh, Imperial Guard, Tyranids, and Necrons. And that I highly recommend it if you do pick this game up, acquire it somehow at your local Kansas, consortium, or just find it somehow that you acquire it. There's a BGG thread that like regularly updates where they print it, and even if you don't, they've got like standees you can use as mini instead of minis for the expansion factions, but everything can be printed off. You can print off all the cards. It's all free, and they've done a great job. They've rebalanced it a few times. The most recent big thing was improving Necrons a little bit because they were a little bit undertuned. Um, but but it's not like the balance of the base game factions was perfect, and I think they fit in the game perfectly, and they're all really well designed. Those guys have done a great job. Um, and so, whereas normally when we're evaluating board games, I don't think we talk about fan expansions, but because this one is out of print, and because there's a very high effort one available for free, or if you want to like buy it to be professionally printed, that's another option. Um, I highly recommend it because it adds to the replayability of this game a lot, and the new factions all have a bunch of really cool ideas that I'm sure FFG themselves might have done similar things if they had had the license for longer, because you know how FFG is. I'm sure there would have been at least one expansion, if not more. you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. All the base game factions really have their own thing going on, and they cover like a lot of what you can do with the system at play here. But Galaxy and Flame comes in and I think really fills all of those gaps and lets you explore some mechanics that are there, but kind of brings factions with new strengths and weaknesses in a very interesting way. For example, like the Necrons have very few units, right? Because you have a limited number of units that you can bring in for any given type of unit and for any given faction. Um, for example, like Eldar, they not only have really strong level 1 ships, they also have more of them than other people, which is massive. It's a really big deal. And so Necrons have very few units across the board, but all their units have really high stats. And you have to deal with that interesting problem. Like I can only be in so many places on the board, but where I am, I'm going to be quite a force, especially in the early game before other folks start upgrading and getting their strong units in. So yeah, I agree. Galaxy and Flames does add that replayability. Uh, I don't have too many issues with this game. Obviously, it's one that we all really love. Perhaps we'll later discuss some of the potential negatives, but in my opinion, just having that fan expansion, which again is really well done, uh, takes away kind of the biggest negative in my mind, which is that this game is really good at 4 players. It's good at 2, it's great at 3, it's great at 4. Um,
Yeah,
I
every
shouldn't
player
say
count
good
is
at
good.
2. It's great at 2 as well. Yeah, it's great at all player
This is
counts. But if
this
you're
is the
playing this with 4
only
people, you're going to have the same 4 factions on the board every time. And so
yeah,
Galaxy and
that's
Flames
that's the
sort of
big thing. I
yeah
think Galaxy and Flames
Yeah.
is going to be most impactful in a 4 player game where like you're going to see way more factions, and that's
yeah
going to help a lot. In a 3 player game, you'll be cycling. But you did bring that up. I think this is the only area control game that's designed with like a wide range of player counts in mind. Like it's not like Star
hmm.
Wars Rebellion, War of the Ring, or something where like it's designed for 2 players. This is the only one I can think of where the 2 player is great. This game at 2 feels so tight and so good, and
Yeah. It's
it's
played
pretty unusual.
competitively at 2, if I remember
Yeah, people
correctly.
people run tournaments in 2 player Forbidden Stars on TTS. I think on like Discord, they've got like a Discord server. They do that sometimes, and
Huh.
it's like it's legit. It's a good enough game that you can do that. I mean, I guess you could play any game in a tournament. So just the fact that run tournaments doesn't necessarily mean anything. But the fact that they do and that they regularly track statistics and stuff is speaks well of it. And at a 2 player count, like you don't hear about people playing most area control games at 2 player that way.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Knocked my whole thing over there.
gosh. But yeah, is there anything we've forgotten? I'm trying to think. We covered combat, map generation, faction asymmetry is immense in this game.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
that was the topic I think you wanted to go into was
yeah,
Yeah,
faction.
we
just go ahead, Ben.
yeah, we were talking about factions, and it was like, I just wanted to talk about the Tao tacos and their gordita crunches as well.
Yeah.
Um, like I love the Tao, and I love what they did with the expansion with them, especially as the resident lore expert. The Tao are famously like they don't travel through the warp like the other like factions, so it makes sense that they have like very few ships that are like in their pool. I believe they have two of the tier two ships and two of the tier zero ships. And it's like I think it's just tier zero and tier two for the
Yep.
ships,
Yep.
anyways. Which is this huge disadvantage.
Well, also
Like you,
importantly, those tier zero ships have 1 HP.
Yeah.
yeah, you have they're crunchy tacos. They're not
Yeah.
soft. They can't take
Yeah.
a hit. You
Yeah.
know,
We'll just
They
like
they
look the minis look like tacos.
yeah, yeah. This is an inside joke, but also the
yeah.
tower known to be lovers of Mexican cuisine. So these two
Yeah,
factors
it's
combined.
like I think people who are on the level would have gotten that already. Like, you're not the resident lore expert, so you didn't understand
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My bad.
that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I love the Tao. They play with the strategy deck in a really interesting way. Like they have the like your dominate just lets you like mine through for the like good cards in your strategy deck, and like I think you can hold like two of them as well, whereas other
Yeah, you
like
can. They have
yeah
that's special for them.
yeah,
The two
and
schemes.
their schemes they can have multiple schemes. Yeah. Which I hate drawing a scheme as most other factions, especially if I haven't used mine already. I almost always love just drawing a tactic because I like just having.
I mean, as an
I
Eldar
like,
player, I'm happy to see anything in that deck. It's
yeah.
such a
I just like having the immediate benefit. Like, just give me some dudes, give me some material, give me whatever. I don't want to have to think more.
I think that
I
we
don't
haven't
have to
really
think
talked
about how
about
to
the
use it.
event. We haven't really talked about the event deck at all, but just briefly, I think the event deck is really cool because it's like it does provide a little bit. This is a game that's essentially designed to be not very random, and even as we said earlier, like it's possible in early game with fewer dice for to be kind of screwed over by rolling a lot of morale, but like most battles aren't going to be determined by randomness, in the same way that like dice rolling in TI or Eclipse, I guess, or whatever, is going to be determined that way. And so the event deck adds a little bit of spice where like it's an extra incentive to strategize because it allows you to get something off the event deck and use it, but it's also like a little extra random thing that you get that's gonna maybe do something surprising on the board or give you some little short-term benefit. Like got mentioned earlier by Blake, is that the Eldar being able to place a free ship in an unexplored void can actually sometimes be very relevant, because if you don't have a ship in your home system, like kind of covering your space, the Eldar can actually just slap a ship in there and effectively blockade it for free if that comes
Yes.
Yeah,
up, and things like that can happen. And of course, and also related to that, we haven't really talked about the upgrade cards to the factions being really interesting. So like when you don't only upgrade your deck for the deck building part of the game, which is for combat, but you also upgrade like your faction's ability to like do unique things. Like the orcs can, without having a ship, can just get on an asteroid and strap an engine on it and kind of use it to travel across one void and hop across, which is very strong.
Yeah.
And
You're kind of upgrading your orders, is the way I think of it, right?
yeah,
yeah.
the
They're
upgrades,
all
yeah.
order upgrades. Yeah,
But that part of the game is also really cool because it costs money basically, and so you're spending money to get something that you may or may not find useful, and so like your resources are stretched thinly in this game. And so
Definitely.
part of what's fun about the deck building combined with the upgrades combined with the units is like you have to think about how to spend your limited resources as best you can depending on the situation. And the answer, it's not a solved game. It's not like
yeah,
you always have a right thing to do. You have to really think about what's going to help you now, what's good for the the factions you're up against, and so it changes depending on the situation.
yeah. I will say I think that the winning of this game, it's not determined by the dice, like you said. It's like pretty low randomness, but it is like determined by if past you was not the biggest idiot imaginable. You know, like
Yeah, who was the least idiotic throughout the game?
yeah, like you're really like struggling. Like it's there's like a lot of times where it's just like, oh man, like I can't believe like I put this order here. What was I thinking? You know, did I really think I could get away with that? And then like there are definitely times where like we've talked about with like you know Blake just dropping the ball, getting hit by the van in the game of chicken. There's a lot of times where it's like, oh man, like somehow this all worked out, you know? Like somehow
Hmm.
I piloted my way to victory. I like, you know, a big pat on the back for past me who somehow saw that this was a good decision, you know?
Right. I think you're bound to have moments in this game where you feel like a dummy, and you're bound to have moments where you feel like totally brilliant for the play. And I love that as
I
like
do
a
too.
sort of
Yeah.
a reward system in this is like, you're always trying to make the right play. I kind of think of it like it's sort of a game of attrition where it's like how quickly will I like mentally fatigue to the point where my plays start losing me the game. Like maybe a silly way to think of it, but it is sort of like a war against yourself of like I gotta play solid, and yeah, that part is quite fun.
This is like playing this game is like participating in the Battle of Waterloo. Like the Waterloo wasn't won like in an hour. It was a battle that stretched across an entire day with
Right.
cavalry charges that failed and cavalry charges that succeeded and people coming in from left field and right field and looping around and all sorts of stuff happening. And you have to imagine if you're like the commander on any side of a battle that rages that long, you get tired. It's like, geez, can we just like call it? And Forbidden Stars does have that kind of thing where it's like it's relentless. You have to keep making good decisions to win. If you
Yeah.
slip up, then you'll get got. And but that's good. I like that a lot about it
Yeah.
because it's like it does create this great, as you guys said, it creates this feeling in the game where like you're constantly bouncing back between feeling like a genius and just feeling like the dumbest person on earth.
Here's
And
Yeah.
yeah. Here's what happens with me all the time. And like I think most games of this Forbidden Stars I've won in the first like 5 rounds or so. I feel like if it gets past that, my bad decisions of lack of strategize always kept like creep up
Oh
on
yeah.
me. Like I frequently under strategize. I'm like
Yeah.
advancing all the time trying to get the easy points. And that's a play style that is like enabled by it, and I've won some games that way. But like I know if we're getting into the later rounds, for me personally, I'm already cursing my past self for not having upgraded my like combat deck. And I am frequently asking you guys too, because you guys play like MTG a lot more than I do, of like, hey, like what is the good cards? Like I
what
I
is
don't
the
know
good
what
cards?
yeah, well, I don't know what the good cards are for this
Yeah.
faction. Like, what do I need? Um, I think that's fun. There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff to bite into in this game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have we omitted anything, or are we ready for the final phase of the Forbidden Stars segment?
Is the final phase scoring it? Because I have a couple of negatives that I think are worth
Oh yeah,
bringing
yeah.
up.
We can talk about a few cons. Yeah.
Yeah.
So number one for me, and I'm gonna spin this because I do love this game.
Okay.
But number one for me is that this game is very convoluted. I mean, for you to learn this
Mhm.
game, you really, really have to invest the time. You could understand the rule book completely and still not know what's going on because you're not going to know what cards are in your opponent's decks. You know, there's just stuff like that where you need to play multiple times, and play time for this, I think for us typically is around like 3 to 4 hours. So it's not a short game by any means, and you have to play multiple times to really get a grasp on like what options does my opponent have available to them. And so it's a bit of a labor of love with this one. Like you got to invest the time in order to truly figure it out. And that's true of a lot of games, but I'm just bringing it up because I think it's maybe even more true for Forbidden Stars than some other games.
it's so incredibly true for Forbidden Stars because most of the mechanics, like most games, the person who is teaching you the game wants to keep teaching you the game throughout the game and probably wants to be like not like necessarily the one who won and like helping guide people toward like good decisions, like for them. But like everything, so much stuff is hidden about this game. It's so opaque that it's like you can't really be like, oh yeah, what you're doing is like stupid because I don't even know what you're doing. For one, like what,
Yeah,
like
you have to make your own mistakes in this game and then learn from them. Basically,
Yes,
it's like I'm not telling you what to do, but you'll know what you did wrong soon.
right.
We've
Which
seen
is
people get
rewarding in the
punished
long
the other
term
way.
for
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
but it can be challenging up front.
It's easy to see like one play of this game turning someone off because they had like a bad experience, and I think like I would just say to people that feel that way, just give it another try. Keep at
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, this is
yeah,
one worth toughing it out if you have a bit of a bad experience the first go, because there's so much depth here and so much to love. Um, the only other thing I have is just, you know, this game does have a lot of replayability, and like I said, I think this gets addressed with Galaxy and Flames. But I think if you have a four-person play group and you're playing this game consistently, and you just have the base game with the four factions, it might turn into a little bit of like, you kind of figure out how those four factions interact, and you know, I don't think it would be a solved game by any means, but it might get a little bit samey.
yeah,
Yeah, even the people that do tournaments on Discord for this game play with Galaxy and Flames. Frankly, even if you showed somebody who had never played the game, like, oh yeah, here's Forbidden Stars, and you just have like the Galaxy and Flames factions included, they would literally never know
Yeah,
that
no, no
those are
way.
expansion factions. Like it's that good. Like they just wouldn't know that like they aren't things that were originally
Yeah,
included with the game.
yeah. And and
100%.
So
FFG foresaw this. They made a box way bigger than necessary and put no insert into
true.
it. So you know.
True. Yeah, there's
Very
enough room
true.
in the box for all those factions anyway. It's like they knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like that's just something FFG does with all of their games.
Yeah.
I should
Yeah.
mention on my first con of it being a little bit of a hard game to learn, the rule book doesn't really do you any favors there either. There's a
Yeah,
how to play book as well as a rule book, and some of the things that should be in the rule book are like in the how to play book, and vice versa. It's a little bit of a confusing rule book.
yeah,
I agree. I think all right, so I think with that out of the way.
Yeah, I don't have anything else negative.
yeah. I don't have much else. No, I don't have anything else. I should say.
All right. I'll go. Is it okay if I go first on the scoring for this one?
Yeah.
No, you guys know where I'm at. I'm gonna give Forbidden Stars a 9.8.
Mm,
Hmm.
And the only reason I don't give it a 10 is because this is actually my favorite board game in my collection. Is just because of like those cons of like I think the system is just a little bit opaque to the extent that sometimes I still have to look up things in the rule book. And like I think like if I were like redesigning aspects of Forbidden Stars, I might clean up like the advanced rules a little bit, maybe things like that, which aren't necessarily intuitive.
mm.
And I do think that like the combat, despite being the coolest combat of all time, still kind of like it's kind of annoying when like like even in a three-player game, if two people are fighting, maybe they're fighting two or maybe they're fighting like two or even three times, and it doesn't involve you, and you kind of just like, all right, well, I'm out of here for 20 minutes or something. And
Yeah.
it pains me to say these things because you guys know how much I like this game, but just to be realistic, I do have to bring that up. But ignoring those issues, this game is amazing. It's if I only owned one area control game in my collection, this would be the game. And I have a lot of area control games. it partially because, as we said, it's good at all. It's good at all of its player counts. Like I'm happy to play this at 2, 3, or 4, no matter what. And I can't say that for most of the other area control games I have. We've already spoken about Tammany Hall. It's basically only a three-player game, and there are other games which scale up or scale down with varying results. And this game works at all player counts. works with all factions. All the factions are really cool. If we did a faction draft, I'd be happy to play any faction in this game. Like they're all really cool. I like them all, and I always find something new to hit myself over the head for, the new mistakes to make, new things to learn every single time we play.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Respectable rating, respectable 9.8.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I think that pretty
No.
much every time somebody has given a rating on this so far, like on the podcast last 2 episodes, I've claimed that it's a respectable rating. And I think it's true. You know? What do you think, Ben? Do you want to give us your rating next?
Yeah, I'll throw it in. Um, if I was still in my era where I was but a novice beginning my journey with Forbidden Stars, it would be rated lower when I was going through my like 10 game like not getting a win streak. But I've gotten past that. I've graduated. You know,
broke through.
I broke
Graduated from
through
Forbidden
it.
Stars Academy.
Yeah, I broke through. I finally figured it out. It finally clicked in place. So yeah, I mean, it's a solid 9 from me. I'm happy to play it with these two guys here. Anytime that we have it like out, like it's always something that I'm happy to bust out and play. I always have a good time. Um, I I do somewhat enjoy stress, and this game does cause some stress. You know, like there is a little bit of that where you're like sweating and you're like thinking like, oh god, like what am I? Okay, like how am I gonna figure out what's going on this turn? You know, but it you stress because it like matters and because it's like fun and because your decisions are like important. You know, and because you're invested. At least that's why I stress anyway.
Yeah. Respectable. 9.0. So
Yeah.
Will's with a 9.8, Ben's with a 9.0. I'm in between those. I'm a 9.5. Um, man, I really want to give this a 10. And
Same. I just can't though. You know, it's like it's not
yeah,
completely perfect, but it's
yeah. There are a few places where it's a bit rough around the edges, right? But it's such a the game feels so complete despite that. Everything really does work well together, and all of its shortcomings can be forgiven just with how like awesome an experience it delivers. And I don't think that can be understated. That it
yeah.
truly
I
is like
think
an
like
awesome game.
yeah, this game is like I mean, frankly, this game is like a 10.5 that's like brought down by its shortcomings down to like a 9.8 for me or like a 9.5 to
It
you.
goes up to a
But
level.
I'm
Yeah.
curious though, Will, when we did last episode and you talked about El Grande, you gave El Grande a 10 with the explanation being, well, El Grande is perfect for what it is in its category, in its weight class.
Right.
And
But
to me, Forbidden Stars is that same way. I think Forbidden Stars is perfect for what it is in its weight class, all of that.
that's true, and I had a feeling you might bring that up. But it's because El Grande has no shortcomings. There's
Mm,
like there are like zero cons in El Grande. Like I can't even point at anything. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like
sure.
I literally can't think of a single thing in El Grande I would change. And remember, we talked about theme a little bit, but that's like whatever. That's not important to that particular design. But like, there's just nothing I can point to bring it down at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As I
Yeah.
said, Forbidden Stars, like the coolness of the experience is like it almost brings it over a 10. But then like there's just a couple things that me trying to overcome my subjectivity, which is that this is my favorite game, and just trying to say like, well, even though it is my favorite game, it does have a couple things that aren't perfect, and so I have to bring it down just slightly. That's
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
logic anyway.
Fair enough.
I've brought this up when I've given ratings for games before, and it's the grandma rating or like the family rating, like what family member I feel like I could teach this to. Um, and it's like it does have that con going for it, which is like I think this is a game for me and my level like my level of being a
This is a
nerd.
game for
You
game.
know,
Right.
yeah, it's
This
a
is a
game
game
for
for gamers.
gamers. You're not it's not on the top side of the iceberg. You know, it's pretty far down. if you're like getting into the whole like board game hobby. We're far from Catan here, you know. We're not there.
It's not
We're not
even
in
visible.
Kansas anymore, right?
It's
Yeah,
not.
exactly,
Catan
right?
isn't even visible like beyond the curvature of the Earth. Like the boat has sailed too far. You know, we're not.
Yeah,
It's fallen below the horizon.
Yeah.
yeah. This is
And,
not.
and
Yeah, yeah. Go
what do
for
you
it.
guys think of that? The weight rating on BGG is a 3.84. Do you think that's about right?
It goes to 5.
It goes to 5. Yeah.
I mean, ATO is the heaviest thing we played, Ben. I think ATO is a 4.74,
Oh wow.
which
Yeah,
makes sense. ATO is heavy.
I would give I think for the mechanics that makes sense. For teachability, this is again like we've said, it's like a 4.8. You know, like you do have to like just play it and a couple times in order to like understand it.
I think
Um,
I think I could teach this game way better now that we played it so much than when we
Hmm.
started. So I think we do kind of we brought it up, and I do think it's real for people that like are just reading, trying to figure out the game from the rule book. But if there is somebody who's played the game a lot, I do think that issue is mitigated a bit.
yeah,
You can give good generic advice, like make sure to strategize, dominate in a
yeah.
system that makes sense
Here,
to dominate in.
here's how an advance order works. Like, don't you know? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can have
that's the
conversation
biggest
5 times,
conversation.
though.
Yeah, you have
yeah,
to. That's the one you're gonna have to repeat a couple
Right.
times.
yeah.
Uh,
But anyway,
before we
yeah.
move on to the next one, I just wanted to throw out that this is a game that's pretty hard to get, but one of the original designers of this game has been for many years trying to get I shouldn't say like a reprint, but like a re-implementation of this game going. Um,
Hmm.
and presumably that will be on Kickstarter in 2025.
Right.
Whether it will
It'll be
actually
with
be, I
like
don't know.
they'll have like the serial numbers filed off. Like it won't be like Warhammer 40K anymore. It'll be like the Gorks instead of the Orcs, or like,
Right. Yeah.
like the old ones instead of the Eldar.
Yeah, Samuel Bailey. It's interesting.
Samuel Bailey.
Samuel Bailey is working on a remake. It's interesting. This was like the golden era of FFG. Corey was working on this game as well, who of course worked on TI, Star Wars Rebellion, and a bunch of other things. They had a bunch of. This was like the result of the most brilliant minds at FFG during the peak of their powers. Made this insanely good game. Um,
It's like the lore for a fantasy world. You're like, it's
yeah,
like during
the,
the
the, the,
height of
the,
their power, they created this.
yeah, this was like they forged the one board game to rule them all.
Yeah, the archaeologists will have a
But
field day when they find this, you know?
oh man, honestly, okay. I guess there's one thing we didn't talk about, which just the very last thing I promise, which is that I love this game's table presence.
Hmm.
The size of the minis is perfect. No mini in any board game should ever be bigger than the size of this game, which is they're just like just the right size to convey what it is, but
Yeah.
it's not like taking up space in the box unnecessarily. But it's enough to be like, oh, I got my cool little, Chaos Space Marines, or my little, whatever, my cool ships. Um, and then the tiles themselves are beautiful. Some of the coolest like designed tiles I've ever seen in a board game. Like the way all the different systems look different, but they've got this cool art style, and
Yeah,
the
there's
way
the
it
flesh
interacts,
planets.
the like the mechanical planets, and like the way the warp storms are a different color palette, so they're easily visible. We didn't even
Hmm.
talk about
Mhm.
this in our fractal review, but the warp storms in fractal, which are it's just kind of like a sort of like Forbidden Stars warp storms, obviously inspired by it, but they're barely visible on the map. You can't see them. And
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
Forbidden Stars, the warp storms are an entirely different color than everything else, and they're quite like flashy. So it's
There's way too
easy.
many tiles on Fractal as well for the warp storms to feel like they matter that much, you know?
Yeah, that's another thing.
yeah,
That they're huge. They're a massive part of this game. Anyway, that's just my last
Yeah.
thing, just to say that it looks good on the table.
Yeah, worth
yeah.
mentioning for sure.
Anyway,
Um,
well, the second game for today is Battle for Rokugan. As I said at the beginning, it's another game from FFG. It came out 2 years after Forbidden Stars. Uh, different designers entirely. Obviously, these are all people that were at FFG at the time, so maybe when they go out for lunch, they can talk about how much they all like hidden movement during this era. So it's not like they're completely unrelated people. But this is the reason why we wanted to combine these two games is because Battle for Rokugan is also a hidden information, hidden order game, but it's very light. It's designed to be played by, I would say, larger player count typically than Forbidden Stars. It goes up to 5, and it also plays very well at 5. I should say this actually, just like Forbidden Stars, this plays perfectly at 3, 4, or 5 at all of its player counts. I don't think there's a 2-player mode. Is there?
There is, apparently,
Oh,
yeah. On BGG, it
okay.
was
I've never
3 to
played this at
5.
2, so maybe I spoke too soon. I don't know what this is like at 2. I've never played it at 2, but at 3 to 5, it plays great. This game is like the same, almost the same system as for the Hidden Orders of Forbidden Stars, but everything else is way lighter and snappier. The resolution phase is fast forwarded into just resolve everything at the same time. So
Hmm.
there's no individual resolution of orders. There's no real combat. It's just you can whoever's number is bigger in the area, plus defender wins. And so this is like you get the experience of Forbidden Stars, but distilled into an experience that's like maybe a third to half the game time, probably
Yeah, I was
I'd
gonna
say
say,
closer to a third, yeah.
yeah,
a third.
I
Yeah.
was I was gonna say I think that I compared Forbidden Stars to like a smorgasbord. It's got a lot going on. It's got a lot of different like little cheeses, and you got all your stuff going there. Battle for Rokugan is like just takes the like hidden order thing and kind of runs with it. It's like you just got a really good piece of cheese off of that platter. Maybe there's like a little bit of cracker under there. Like it's what it needs to be.
I don't know if I'm following this anymore.
You don't get it. So to me, Battle for Rakugan is like a big old summer sausage that you're just taking a bite of. You know what I'm saying? Whereas you might have a little bit of summer sausage over on the Forbidden Stars platter. Rakugan, I mean, that's what you're there for anyways. Get out of the way
Yeah.
with these grapes and stuff.
Yeah, this game
I
kind
don't
of
know.
doubles down on hidden orders, where like it's the whole game, like it's just the
Yeah.
hidden orders really. There's a few other minor mechanics like the control of a certain region gets you access to a one-time use card.
Yeah, the cracker. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's the cracker. You're right. There are a
Yeah.
couple crackers. There are indeed the regional crackers of the different realms of the Legend of the Five Rings. By the
Right.
way, interesting that this is also another IP game, like Forbidden Stars, for an IP that's now basically defunct. I think Five Rings is totally abandoned now, right?
Yeah, I had been seeing all the they had a Five
Hmm.
Rings living card game as well, where like all of those had been going on sale for like the past 2 years. Where yeah,
Yeah, so another abandoned thing. Interesting, but this is a game which, whereas Forbidden Stars is difficult enough and opaque enough that I understand it'd be hard to sell to a modern board game audience. You can't really move directly from like Wingspan to Forbidden Stars, and I think that a lot of board game designers are thinking along those lines. It's like, okay, well, what are the most likely points of entry for the modern board gamer? Obviously, Wingspan, maybe Dune Imperium, is still going to
hmm.
be Catan for some people, and so like jumping off from there, how easy is it going to be to integrate somebody into this like board game we're trying to sell or design, preferably both. I think Forbidden Stars is like so far removed from those things that there's like nothing in common almost. So you're not going to be able to have many transferable skills. Battle for Rokugan, though, because it's so light, I'd honestly at the same level of person I could teach this to my family. I guess is Ben brings up.
Yeah.
Maybe not my grandma.
Yeah,
Uh,
can
Yeah.
we get the grandma rating, Ben?
because my grandma's
Yeah.
dead. But if my grandma were alive, I might be able to teach her this game. She was a smart
Right.
lady. She'd be able to
Yeah.
pick it up. And
Yeah.
Respect.
Respect.
because this game is like the other thing is that unlike Forbidden Stars, illegally placing your tiles is legal within the bound of the rules.
I love it. I love that part. It's so fun.
And so if somebody does something that's like wrong during the tile placement phase in Forbidden Stars, you'd after the fact you'd have to be like, oh, you have to fizzle that order because it was an illegal placement, and they'd be able to get more event cards as a result of fizzling it. In this game, like you can just do whatever. I mean, you could just put it may not work, but you could just put your tiles down wherever you want and just bluff. You even have a specific tile for bluffing to like
Yep.
pretend that you have a ninja or that you have a raid or what have you. And so it's much more loosey goosey. Like you can kind of just be bluffing constantly and have nothing, be doing all sorts of crazy hijinks in this game. And this is like a it's more the reason I was bringing this up related to Forbidden Stars is I'm more shocked that this hasn't been reprinted than I am
Mm.
shocked that Forbidden Stars hasn't been re-implemented, because I understand why Forbidden Stars would be hard to re-implement. But this game I think is like asking for a reprint and a retheme with something that's more, that's not of a dead IP, because it's like it's an easy teach. It's so fun. I've never had to play this where people didn't have a blast. Like even when we played it at like the board game meetup with just random people, everybody was like laughing and just having a good time with this one. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like just Battle for Westeros or whatever. Like you
yeah,
literally could just like it could be like just about anything.
Yeah, I
yeah.
think that's a great point, Will. Like, it truly is such a, easy to pick up and really elegant system that, um, to Ben's point, kind of leads with that hidden order thing and really makes that the focal point and could be a good a jumping off point for folks who haven't played something with hidden orders or maybe haven't played area control at all. I think this would be a great foray into the genre for anybody. Like BGG has the weight listed at 2.74. I think that's like pretty high for what it is. I wouldn't be surprised to put this at like a 2.25 to 2.5 sort of area.
Yeah.
Tyrants of the Underdark is 2.55, which I would consider to be another excellent entry level area control game. This is 2.74. I would say functionally these are about the same weight. I'd put them at like a 2.5.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
both easy teaches. If there's one experienced player at the board who's just in this case maybe just played it like once or twice before, they're going to be able to guide the process. And most importantly, um, this game just has so much funny stuff happen innately, that I don't think you get too wrapped up in like who wins, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like there is
Yeah.
a strategy in this game, and like there's a lot of like optimal choices you can make, kind of, but the sheer chaos of this game, especially in a higher player count, and the fact that everything's resolved simultaneously, means that so much crazy stuff is going to happen that's kind of outside of your control, and you just have to accept that. you
Yeah.
know,
It's
like
it's
it's
like, and I think part of what contributes to that is that the order reveal is all at once. It's sort of like, and now we're going to see like all of this chaos that we've set up unfold.
Mhm.
You're almost as invested in seeing like, oh, what the hell is going on the other side of the board? What has been attacking? Oh, he did a bluff. I thought that he was surely raiding that area or what have you. And
Yeah.
that's almost as exciting as seeing what goes down in the battles that you've set up. And so I agree. You don't end up like the game lends itself to not just being light mechanically, but being sort of light in terms of the tension around the
It's
actual
lighthearted.
battles. Yeah, lighthearted. Yes,
I also like
exactly.
that there's you everybody has like an innate way to just like peek or like even fizzle somebody else's order like once during the game.
Yeah,
Like it can help be like you get to like look at it, and then also like it can have like funny stuff happen because you can use your like one I'm gonna fizzle an order on somebody's bluff, and then you're like,
That was
yes,
literally me last time we played.
yep. Which is so fun with the bluff, right? Because if you put it in a place where it's like they have to deal with this or they have to be worried about this. Maybe
That's
we
an
should
amazing
talk
feeling.
just real quickly about like because obviously we've mentioned, okay, well, the main thing you're doing is these hidden orders. obviously some of them are attacking, some of them are, I think the attacks actually you can use for defense. There's a few special ones you can do. A peace order, I think it's called, that makes it so that nobody can attack in a region until that peace token is removed, which is really hard to do. You can do a raid, which completely destroys a region and takes it out of scoring for the rest of the game. There are ninjas, which can be placed in any region. You don't have to be adjacent to the region you're trying to attack with a ninja. And then there are ships, which, as you would think, can fight like over water, basically. And the game's played out over 5 rounds. And as Ben mentioned, you have during those 5 rounds a card that lets you peek at a hidden order once, and just once for the whole game, not once per round. And then you have one that lets you look at a hidden order and then discard it. Which is really cool because it's super interesting to see, like, when are people going to use those, when are they going to come out. There's also a very strong first player card every round. Whoever goes first each round gets the first player card, which is basically another instance of, I'm going to cancel one of your orders and just pick it up and toss it off the table type. Well, maybe don't toss it because it's an out of print game, and Will's going to be pissed
Yeah,
if you're
please
tossing his
don't
chips
toss it.
around. But
Treat it with
you know what I
care.
mean. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the basic structure. I don't think I'm missing too much there.
It's worth mentioning that both Shugenja and the first player card that let you remove orders, like, you're committing a lot by using them. Because you don't get to like look at it and be like, oh, this one I don't need to remove, I'll just take the card back. Like, you use that card, you're committed to removing that tile without knowing what it is.
Right.
Which can lead to you getting blown out, like we got mentioned. You use it on a bluff tile, and so it feels like a huge decision you're making when you actually use one of those cards, like, because you're afraid of getting blown out, and or it might turn out to be something that, even if it's not a bluff, it's like it wasn't important, like it
Yeah.
was like a 1 power army or something.
Right.
Yeah.
A few things that I don't think we mentioned that I really like about this game. You're really encouraged to defend, which to me is a big problem in a lot of games, is where when you don't have much of an incentive to defend your territory. In this game, it really matters for a few reasons. The most obvious one being, if you defend a region, you get to flip over your little control tile, and all of a sudden that tile is worth +1 VP at the end of the game just because you defended it, which is great. Um, and then secondly, you score bonus points for owning like every single spot on the board is part of a larger region. And I think each region is like 4 spots. If you own that whole region, you get a pretty sizable amount of extra victory points at the end of the game. And then not only that, everybody has a hidden objective that I believe all of them relate to owning like some particular swath of land, or like having connected regions, that
There,
sort of
there,
thing.
there, there are a couple weird
Um,
ones, like having the fewest regions controlled among the
Yeah,
players and things like that. But yeah, mostly it's like controlling all of like one region, or having like a line of regions that are connected or something. And so you're
yeah.
kind of thinking about that as you play.
And
yeah.
it's not uncommon that like people's interests start to overlap because of those hidden objectives, and it's like all of a sudden it's very important for me to defend here, and now like we're actually going to have a battle instead of, I mean, you can imagine a earlier version of this game where maybe there's not as much incentive to defend and everybody's just like trading spots every turn, and it would be kind of boring.
Yeah. Just musical chairs.
Yeah. But I think they do a good job of making the stakes of each battle feel like relatively high throughout the game, despite there being a million of them.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot to talk about with this game, because I think it's just a good game that really is kind of proof of concept for a mechanism that I think is commonly thought of as being more complicated. For, like, as we said, Forbidden Stars is a game for gamers. This is not a game for gamers. This is a game for anybody, honestly.
Mm,
this is one of the best entry level board games that there is, I think. And concepts like controlling a region and getting bonus points for it, or transferred over from even something as basic as like Risk. Like
Yeah.
Risk is like, you control North America, you get like bonus points, or bonus like dudes you make, or whatever it is in Risk. I haven't played it in a long time, but stuff like that is just easily understood. And the map is beautiful in this game, and it's also readable in a
Mm.
way where, like, oh, there's the blue region and the pink region and the green region. I can see all these things, and it kind of just makes sense to people. I've never had an issue teaching this game. Um, no one's ever said, "Oh, I can't believe you didn't bring this mechanic up."
I think the only place where that might happen is related to the bonus cards that go to people who once a game per region. If you control the entirety of a region, you can get this bonus card. And if
Yeah,
somebody
that's
else
kind of
controlled that region earlier in the game, you don't get it. It's only once per the whole game for everybody.
yeah, that's the
And
kind of only like extra thing.
yeah, I think that's the only place where people might be like, well, why didn't you tell me that card was going to be strong? It's like, I don't know. I mean, most of them are pretty strong. I think minor complaints, some of them are like much less strong, or there's one or two, like the crab region. Yeah, so every region has two cards, and you just take a random one at the beginning of the game. The crab region, one of their cards like lets you make a spot on the board into a harbor where it can like be attacked by ships or have ships
I knew you
attack
were
from
going to
it.
bring that up. I was like, he's going to bring up
That
the
card is
harbor.
the dumbest. It's so dumb. And it's like, there are other regions where you get the card and you're like, oh my God, this is like going to create this explosive, huge play. So I could
It's
I could see, and I think it did happen in our case, a new player seeing someone else get this really explosive card and go, oh, I'm going to double down and really take over the crab region. And they're like, I get to make somewhere a harbor. But
They'll
yeah, I,
never
I would
expect my
agree with you,
naval
Will.
play. Yeah.
There's not like a ton more to talk about on this one. It's just solid. A proof of concept. It really shows you that the hidden order stuff is fun and gets people involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any
I
thoughts
want.
from you on that one, Ben?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't have a single thought going on right now. No.
Nice.
I was going to say one thing that's nice about this is it has that same thing that Forbidden Stars has, where even though the orders are revealed simultaneously, which is different from Forbidden Stars, the placing of orders is not simultaneous; it's in turn order, and that
Hmm.
is so much fun. That's one of the best parts of Forbidden Stars in any hidden order game in this vein, which is that, like, plunk, just put it down, and then suddenly everybody goes wild. It's like, oh, you attacking me there? Oh, oh, what are you thinking? You should be
Yes.
attacking over there. Like, it always causes this like funny explosion of activity, and then like you kind of get to have that, and that's basically the whole game, like that fun
Yeah.
phase, because like, everything else is simultaneously done,
Right.
and
And that creates so much table talk in the same way that Forbidden Stars does as the orders are going down. Yeah.
mhm.
100%. Table talk in this game is
Yeah.
great, by the way.
It's just super
Um,
funny. Yeah, because you're also not trying to make sure nobody knows like what your secret objective is, and
mhm.
it's like, hey man, I really need that region, like, to defend it, for a reason that is not my secret objective. I just gotta get there, man.
Yes.
And, but
Yeah.
man. Anyway, yeah,
Shall
I think
we
we could.
jump into the score? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Well, we
How
don't
about
have 3 games this time around, so I guess either Ben or I will go first. Do you want to go first, Ben, or shall I?
you went last? So right with the Forbidden Stars, you go first, and I'll just go second twice.
I guess I'll go last. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair's fair.
Yeah, put Blake in the hot
Um,
seat.
can I call my own rating respectable? Because I'm giving it an 8.0.
Interesting.
If I was the type of guy to not give ratings that are only in 0.5 increments, I might give this a slightly higher rating. I'm rounding down, not up here, is what I'm trying to say. But an 8.0 just feels right to me. I mean, it's solid. I feel good playing it. I'm happy to play it. Yeah, total
Yeah.
package, this one.
Yeah. I am going to give this a slightly higher rating. I'm going to give it an 8.7, I think. I quite enjoy this game, and it has a similar thing to the El Grande effect, where I don't think I can't think of too much that I'd change. There might be some minor things, but I do really respect a simple design because oftentimes simple does not mean like easy to design. In fact, simple is oftentimes the hardest thing to achieve with a design, and I think this does what it sets out to do, and it showcases a mechanic that is very interesting. And it, like I said with the smorgasbord analogy, it really like it goes down into like here is this like bite that is, you know, like what it like that is good for what it is and is good what it like the small thing, you know, rather than being like something that's like a lot, you know, like Forbidden Stars has a lot going on, but this doesn't, and it's not any worse for it. It's simple and good, and I like it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give this an 8.5. I think this is and it could easily go higher if it were more strategically interesting. Like I think I said this, I forget if it was the first or second episode, but I think for me a really big part of my rating system is like how strategically interesting it is. And this game is not strategically interesting, but it's really fun.
Yeah.
And you abandon all illusions of control, and like once you do, this game is hilarious, and like it's a great time. As Ben said, it showcases the mechanic that's central to it perfectly, and that does exactly what it's setting out to do. I think that's like an 8.5 for me. I think like I said, I can't give it like higher than that, I think, because it's like it would to for me to put it to anything 9 or above is like a game that I like to think about. Maybe even when I'm not playing it, I'll be thinking about it. This game is like we bust it out, we'll have an amazing time, and that's it.
That
you
Battle
know,
for Rokugan doesn't keep you up at night.
no. I still get kept up at night thinking about Forbidden Stars mistakes. You know, I'll wake up in the night
Yeah.
screaming, "Oh, that's that double advance!" Usually,
Yeah.
what it is I think back about times that I like put the build in the wrong spot of the stack.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the most
So
common
true.
mistake even now. I always think like, oh my god, I'm never gonna financially recover from putting this build order like at the. It's like it's usually like it's like a dominate build something, and then it's like, oh no,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to strategize before building in order to. Anyway, it's not important, but I still think about those things. Yeah,
Yeah, me too. It's always like you always go to bed thinking about the Forbidden Stars game you played. Not really the case with Rakugan.
yeah.
What happens at the table of Rakugan stays at the table of Rakugan.
True, but it's a strong
Yeah.
8.5 for me. I think this is another. This is a game that does exactly what it needs to do, and it doesn't have any significant cons really. Um, and like I said, I'm extremely surprised this hasn't been reprinted or re-implemented in
Yeah,
some way by somebody. I feel like this could be a hit. You know, I mean, like if you just retheme it, keep everything just quite similar to the way it is. Maybe mix up a couple minor things, like maybe make the regional cards rebalanced or kind of change that stuff a little bit, and you've got a hit board game on your hands. I don't know, like why it hasn't been done. People are like, I don't know. I honestly don't know. It seems like a no brainer to me. Maybe I should do it.
I mean, put an animal theme on this thing, it'd be flying off the shelves, bro.
Yeah, just get some anthropomorphic furry. Yeah, you know.
Okay, whoa. Say how you really feel.
Amy Stonemeyer, I've got a hit.
Jamie, we've got another animal game, and this time it's not mediocre. And he's like, "What?
An
It's not
absolute
mediocre. I'm not
banger.
interested then."
Whoa.
Oh, I went there.
The resident wingspan disrespecter.
Yeah, I'm the
Yeah.
resident
Wingspan
Stonemaier
disrespecter has
disrespecter.
entered the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, but hey, to be fair, Libertalia is a good game, but that's not a Stonemaier design. So
Yeah. And they made it worse with the theme.
they did, yeah.
They made it worse.
It's like
I have that one though. I like Libertalia pretty well.
yeah, Libertalia is good. Well,
Mhm.
anyway, I think that's everything that we'd like to say about Forbidden Stars and Rokugan at this juncture. I'm sure we're going to bring up Forbidden Stars in reference to other things moving forward, just because it's like such a focal point.
Yeah, that was actually a discussion point when we were planning the episode. We were like, do we talk about Forbidden Stars this early? We're not going to be able to talk about it again. We were like, no, we're going to be able to.
Yeah.
But that's not going to stop me. I'll bring it up again.
That's right. But yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Cool.
Well, thanks for watching and or listening, and we hope you enjoyed. Sure to like, subscribe, or don't, or just watch the video and enjoy it on your own terms. And hope to see you guys next time.
Yeah.